TSO HSSC Excellence presents Barrier Thinking. What is a barrier? A barrier is a protective measure put into place to prevent or limit the harm from a hazard impacting on either people, environment, assets, or reputation. In the HSSC world of barriers, there are two types of barriers. One is an equipment barrier and the other a people barrier. Equipment barriers are basically equipment, hardware, software or assets that are intended to prevent or reduce the harm from a hazard. People barriers are basically a person performing an action that prevents or reduces the harm from a hazard. Now remember, a people barrier is not a barrier unless the person is performing an action. A manual is not a barrier. Putting things together into a bow tie concept where the hazard wants to move to the right and impact on people, environment, assets and reputation, and this is done through a top event where there is an undesirable event of release of the hazard with the potential to cause harm. We put in multiple barriers into place consisting of people barriers and also equipment barriers to prevent the top event from happening, and these are called control barriers. When we put a set of barriers after the top event to mitigate the potential harm, they are called recovery barriers. Let's take a look at an example of a tank filling operation. ATGs and overfill sensors are control barriers, while the bund wall is a recovery barrier in case of a spill. Now, a person acting as per the LOP can be a control barrier or a recovery barrier. When the tank is being filled up and the overfill sensor is operational, then things are in control. However, if the overfill sensor malfunctions, we have an overfill, and therefore additional barriers need to be called into place, such as emergency response. Now, how do we support barriers and make sure they work properly? Equipment barriers need to be maintained. They either need inspection or replacement, and this is done by people in critical positions. People barriers are also called critical positions, and they are guided by critical processes. Now, putting it all together, we have a set of equipment barriers, a set of people barriers acting as either a control barrier or a recovery measure barrier. Now, what is important is barriers that are put into place need to be maintained by people in critical positions, following critical processes, and performing maintenance activities to prevent hazards from causing harm. Thank you for your attention.